televoter.
We need to get people registered. We need people to get out to the polls to make sure that we have a president. Because if we don't, we won't.
Yes. So make an educational choice. Good point.
네, 타이미입니다. 아싸 커뮤니케이션 활동을 준비를 하고 있어요. 사운드 프로바이더스 저도 프로젝트에 참여.
It doesn't say vote for or vote against or anything that really makes it clear to you. Well, I should correct that. You're intelligent people. I think it's clear to you who you're supposed to vote for or against, but it doesn't say that in the words of the commercial. And that's one of the areas that the board wants the legislature to work on, is defining what's subject to disclosure. The other issue is in what you disclose even for an expenditure that is subject to disclosure, and this is that issue of going up one level. As I said, an independent expenditure committee will disclose the corporation or the nonprofit corporation that gave it money. For example, the Sierra Club or the NRA donated $100,000, but we don't know anything about where the Sierra Club or the NRA got that money. Now, for those groups, that's probably not too material because they have thousands or tens or hundreds of thousands of donors, all fairly small. But what about an organization like Americans for Prosperity, which has been linked, at least in the media, to the Koch brothers? We don't know because we don't have any reporting from them. Or some other group that we don't know anything about at all, being the donor to one of these registered PACs. We don't know if that group got 5 contributions or 1 contribution or 1,000 contributions. We do have a law that does go a little bit into the depth of the underlying sources of that donor, but it's so weak in Minnesota as to be almost totally ineffective. When we tried to get this law changed in the last couple of sessions, we had opponents, including a couple, the NRA was one, and a local Right to Life group was another. The NRA said that our effort, the board's effort, was dangerous, politically motivated measures aimed at suppressing political speech by membership organizations such as the NRA, pose a grave risk to freedom of speech, impose excessive regulatory burdens on political and commercial interests. That's the picture they're painting, and all the opponents paint that same picture. It's just terrible, hurts jobs. What is the picture that proponents of better disclosure are painting? Well, it's good. We want sunlight. We want everybody to know where the money is coming from. It's not a very threatening picture. It doesn't convey, I think, very much of a sense of urgency, like the republic is going to fall if we don't have this disclosure. Some commentators have suggested that the argument ought to be styled in terms of dark money, hiding big donors, influencing legislators, and everybody in campaign finance regulation that I know of disagrees with the Supreme Court's holding that says independent spending cannot have an influence on an elected official. And I know that from experience. Even the threat of independent spending can have an influence on the vote and the attitude, certainly, of an elected official. So I think you have to change the conversation. You have to get many more people involved. One of the groups opposing the actions the board tried to have the legislature take claims to have 70,000 members in Minnesota. Most of these groups are groups that have members who are politically active, who will contact their legislator by email when they're asked to do so, and legislators are flooded with emails and they respond to those. In some sense, I get the picture from our experience that it's not always just the money, and maybe that's a good thing because it's these groups with many, many active members who also vote who get the legislator's ear, and really money has nothing to do with that part of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now our next speaker is going to talk about some reform efforts, and of course that would be the League of Women Voters who's involved in that, and our speaker is Sherry Knuth.
Thank you for having me here tonight. The League of Women Voters of the United States formed positions on campaign finance and money in politics after the Watergate scandal. And it's the general position that the League works under is to support incremental reform measures while working toward public financing as the final solution. So, and that's what we're doing here at the League in Minnesota and the US League. One of the things, I think we're seeing a really dark picture here tonight. And I think we have to keep in mind that we're early in, it's really not been very many years since Citizens United was decided in 2010. And since some of these changes have occurred to really bring the really big dollars into our system. People are still reacting, and people are trying to find ways to deal with it. If you listen to the media, you hear, a variety of efforts that are being made around the United States. And here in Minnesota, we are working with the US League, which is going to convene a new study committee to address the issue, address what changes should be made in the wake of Citizens United and McCutcheon. And we're also taking efforts at the state level ourselves to try to improve disclosure and move the needle on making this issue stronger in the eyes of citizens and public officials and working toward longer-term solutions. So one of the things that Gary mentioned was the effort in the last legislative biennium to improve disclosure of independent spending. And that's where we see this loophole about ads that go on TV but don't use magic words such as vote for or vote against don't have to be disclosed. The people behind those ads don't have to be disclosed. So the League is advocating at the legislature in favor of the disclosure legislation, and we're asking our members and the public to let their legislators know that they support this disclosure measure. And Gary mentioned a couple of the groups that are against the enactment of new disclosure legislation. It doesn't
sono scarse e che bisogna ben scegliere quali sono le priorità di spesa, scegliendo quindi di puntare su degli investimenti che possono produrre occupazione e su delle opere che sono utili. Evidentemente il tema di che cos'è un'economia sostenibile e quali sono le scelte che devono essere fatte per arrivare ad un'economia sostenibile sono fonte e sono anche soggetto di dibattito pubblico, ahimè, sia in Italia che in Europa ancora piuttosto raro. Infatti quando noi vediamo in questo periodo, in questo momento, la discussione intorno al pacchetto energia 2030, noi ci rendiamo conto che la possibilità di tornare indietro su impegni molto importanti come quelli delle energie rinnovabili, che sono citate dall'iniziativa come soggetto prioritario per rivolgere gli investimenti o l'efficienza energetica o l'idea appunto che bisogna affrontare i cambiamenti climatici, sembrano oggi meno importanti di qualche anno fa e non ne viene colto abbastanza l'enorme potenziale per quanto riguarda la capacità di creare nuova occupazione e di togliere il nostro continente dalla dipendenza dei carburanti fossili.